The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? Me, you're me. Louie T, welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. We just had a chance to listen to our new offensive and defensive coordinators, Joe Whitt Jr. on the defensive side of the football and Kliff Kingsbury on the offensive side. I'm trying to make sure that I don't overdo it. The last 2 weeks or so have been exhilarating as a fan of a team that has been down for so long. And you don't want to get ahead of yourself. You don't want to start counting your chickens before they hatch. But today's presser or pressers felt like an exclamation point on the first two or the first three legs of the offseason that we had talked about. For me, this was always going to be a 5-phase plan this offseason. Phase one was getting the GM, getting the general manager, shaping that front office. They've done that by landing Adam Peters, who then recruited Lance Newmark here from Detroit. And so that front office is shaped and molded. Phase two was finding the right head coach. And we were so certain that that guy's name was Ben Johnson. And we couldn't have been more wrong. Now, look, Ben Johnson could turn out to be a fantastic head coach 2 years from now. Who knows? But he probably wasn't the right man for this job right now. Because I think the guy that was the right hire for this job is currently here in Washington, in Dan Quinn. And a wise woman once told me, sometimes what you want and what you need, two different things. Two different things. We wanted Ben Johnson, but what we really needed was Dan Quinn. We were told he was going to assemble this all-star cast. He was going to be able to bring in a staff that we could be proud of, that we could win with, that would help this organization grow. He's exceeded my expectations in that department. So phase two, check. And then phase three was filling out the staff. You know, it's one thing to hire a coach, but what is he going to do in terms of bringing in guys? Because you can't do it by yourself. What is he going to do in terms of bringing in people who are teachers, who are motivators, who are able to communicate, get the most out of players, understand what this game is all about? And the staff that has been assembled, I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't impressed. That's an understatement. Listening to the two pressers today, they were polar opposite pressers. Joe Whitt Jr. was a guy that not many people knew about. Shit, I didn't know about him until 3 weeks ago. I had heard Law talking about him when we would talk about Deron Bland, but it never went any further than that. And I never really, took the time to figure out like what this guy's impact truly was. It wasn't until Dan Quinn got the job and the first hire that he made was Joe Whitt Jr. that I started digging into what this guy was all about. And very quickly, I saw a very passionate coach who was a no-nonsense communicator that was going to come in here and, if nothing else, instill a culture with this defense. We had heard about the Cowboys producing all these turnovers, and one of the things they would say in Dallas was Joe Whitt Jr. was the ice to Dan Quinn's fire. Quinn's the more energetic and, fiery guy, rah-rah. And he said it in his press conference. I'm not a rah-rah guy. That's not me. Let's start with Joe Whitt Jr.'s presser, because I was locked in. Literally. When I tell you I was sitting this close from the damn monitor watching his press conference, I was this close. My damn neck started hurting. I was so close to the screen. I was in like a trance listening to him talk about his journey, talk about this opportunity, what it means to him, and what he's all about. There were a number of tidbits from his presser that made me smile, like a proud papa whose only son finally made it. And the first one came very early on in the press conference when John Keim, and I had to tell I had to tell Joe, hey, Joe, I got this one, man. I got this. Because Joe jumped down John Keim's throat. Pause. I know John was like, whoa, I didn't mean any harm, Joe. He asked Joe Whitt why he was ready for this opportunity. And Joe Whitt said, that's a funny thing to ask. And then proceeded to not necessarily attack John Keim as much as attack that whole notion of, I'm ready now. Man, I've been ready. Man, I was ready. F that. I've been ready. Since my dad told me he was coming to the house to come get me. The hell are you talking about? I should have been got a job back in 15. They ain't show up. Valuable lesson, had to grow up. But it's all good now. He ready to show the league. You can do it for them. You can do it for itself. I was ready to go 0 to 100. Real quick. Real effing quick after listening to Joe Whitt Jr. I was ready to grab 10 of y'all, and I'm like, let's lace them up. Hey, y'all strap up. Let's go. He said, we're going to be a run and hit team. We're going to be physical. Let's get physical. He's like, man, if that ain't what you want to do, he said, that's fine. You just ain't going to be here a long time. it's been a common theme, right? It's, they've talked all off season about being aligned, having one uniform vision for where this organization is heading. And this press conference from Joe Whitt Jr. felt like a continuation of Dan Quinn's press conference, because Quinn talked about being a physical football team. Hell, Adam Peters in his initial introductory press conference talked about, hey, teams are going to know when they come to Washington and play the Commanders, because we're going to be a physical group. You'll never be able to say that we didn't leave it all out on the field. That's the only thing I can promise you, is we're going to play hard and we're going to play physical. Then Dan Quinn jumped on and was like, yo, we're going to establish an identity. Forget about scheme. Forget about 3-4 versus 4-3. As Joe Whitt Jr. talked about ATL 3, Seattle 3. Forget about all that. We establishing a culture and an identity. We hitting mother effers in the mouth around here. That's what we doing. We'll worry about how we going to approach that, where we going to put these players. But in the meantime, let's make one thing abundantly clear. We hitting. We running. We hitting. We gang tackling. We being physical. And we going to get the football. Now, hey, that football talk is the equivalent of that stick talk, that stick talk, that stick talk, that stick talk. That's the equivalent of turnover talk to me. Like, when he said turnovers are like air, we need it to breathe. We need it to live. Say, hey, Joe, man, stop playing with me, bro. Stop playing with me, bro. Then he proceeded to talk about, he said, you're going to hear me say that a lot. Then he proceeded to talk about feeding the studs. He said, you got to earn that moniker, that title. But once you do, we're going to draw some shit up for you. Don't you worry. One of my chief complaints last year, specifically once we got rid of the two edge rushers and Chase Young and Montez Sweat, was how are we going to devise a way to isolate the only two dudes up front that are worth the damn at this point? How are we going to make sure that we create an environment where other teams can't just double them or muck it up inside and make sure that those guys don't win? There was never a clear plan put in place. Clearly, he is aware of the Bama wall. Who isn't? He's like, look, I'm a back end guy, but it starts up front. I'm going to tell you, he's a lot like Eric Bieniemy, but with substance. Now, a lot of the things he said, because remember, when Eric Bieniemy had his presser last year and we were all excited, he really didn't say anything. Dropped a couple of cliches on us. What was the one about progress? Something is the enemy of progress. Forgot the phrase he used. I'm missing a word. Can't think of it. But something about being content, something like that. But whatever the case may be, he didn't really say anything. He didn't really give us any insight as to how he was going to turn this thing around. Well, Joe Whitt Jr. came in here and he said, I'm going to be consistent from the word go. He was like, when we I've been a part of situations where we won 20 games in a row, and I've been a part of situations where we lost 6 in a row. And he said, I'm going home the same time, whether we win 20 in a row or we lose 6 in a row. You know why? Because I'm giving you everything I got. Whether we winning or we losing, whether we up or we down, I'm emptying the tank when I'm at work. So when we start losing and I see guys staying 2-3 hours later than normal, why weren't you doing that when we first started losing? Or why weren't you doing that when we were winning? You were cheating us. You weren't all in. If you got to stay later, that means you weren't putting in enough work to begin with. It's a simple message, but he makes it abundantly clear. This is the standard. This is what I expect from you because this is what I'm putting in. He talked about putting together a staff that's going to hold guys accountable. And we're going to take a look at that staff here in a bit. He talked about some of the players that he was excited about. And I told y'all the biggest winners with the hire of Dan Quinn, but more specifically, Joe Whitt Jr., I said the biggest winners is the entire secondary. All the young guys in particular. Quan Martin, Emmanuel Forbes, Percival Butler, Derek Forrest. Like, these are the biggest winners in all of this. Because those guys are going to be coached extremely hard. But if they take to that coaching and continue to develop and blossom and they're able to really digest the scheme, whatever it is they're being taught to do and the techniques that are being shown to them, they're going to get better, infinitely better. And we saw flashes from Quan Martin at the end of last season. He started to show why he was a second-round pick. Joe Whitt Jr. said, I like both of those dudes coming out. And he said, look, you got to be able to catch the football. Isn't that the truth? We got a lot of guys around here who couldn't catch claps in a whorehouse, as a wise man used to say. Forbes isn't supposed to be one of them, though. We'll see what happens. But the thing that I felt was the most impactful that he said, because he said a lot of good shit, but the thing that stuck with me the most was when he said, in the NFL, defenses are constantly evolving and changing. So are the offenses. He said the primary goal of the defense is to make the quarterback have to play post-snap. And what he means by that, make them think post-snap. Most of the work is done for the quarterback pre-snap. If you don't disguise what it is you're in, if they get a bead, okay, this is a cover 2 look. This is cover 3. Well, they know exactly where to go with the football. Remember, in the headset of the quarterback is the head coach or the offensive coordinator, and they're looking at the field and they're seeing what they're in and what the alignment is. You do a motion, you get up there with enough time, they can tell you, hey, this is their cover 4 look. So you know where to go with the football. We practiced this all week. That deep over route should be open right in the middle of the football field. Back foot hits, let it go, right? Like, you already know because pre-snap you were able to determine what they're in. If you can get the quarterback to think that it's one thing pre-snap And in post snap, it's something totally different. That's half the battle right there. Now, as Joe Whitt Jr. so eloquently put it, now he's got to think. Thinking slows him down. That's how mistakes happen. Now you have a chance to create a turnover, and then you got to actually catch the football when it comes to you. And he talked about drills and things that they're going to do to make sure that they hammer home the point of the importance of turnovers, something that we've lacked here for far too long. I couldn't be more ecstatic with Joe Whitt Jr. coming in here, and he's so hungry for this opportunity. So hungry. You could tell game recognized game. I'm somebody that I constantly have a chip on my shoulder. Always. And you can tell when someone else has a chip on their shoulder and that they use it for motivation. Intrinsically, Joe Whitt Jr. is self-motivated. Grew up on a farm. All he knows is hard work. He doesn't need the chip to motivate him, but it doesn't hurt. I can tell you that much. It doesn't hurt. He wants to prove everybody wrong. He should have gotten this job almost a decade ago. And he told us, I was ready in 2015. He's got an interesting cast of best friends, too. He talked about Marcus Washington. That was one of my favorite Redskins. I told you guys that before. Loved me some M-Dub, as I used to call him. Love me some Marcus Washington. One of my favorite players of the last 20 years. Hell, we're right at 20 years. I think he joined the team in 04, if I'm not mistaken. If not 04, 05, but I'm pretty sure it was 04. So it would be right around 20 years ago. One of my favorite Redskins. And he said, that's one of his boys. He said Ryan Clark is one of his boys. Makes sense. Those are all down south guys. Ryan Clark's from Louisiana. Joe Whitt Jr. is from Alabama. His dad, if you don't know, was a well-respected coach at Auburn for many, many years. So he talked about another guy that's on the staff now that is a good friend of his, former Steelers cornerback. I'm blanking on his name, but we'll see it here. We've got a list that we'll go through because they've finalized the staff. So I had brought this up yesterday when I said, I hope they finalize the staff and we can get some finality to all this and we can start turning our attention to free agency and then the next steps of the offseason. I told you it's a 5-step process for me this offseason. We were 5 steps. We on step 4 now. Step 1 was the front office, getting Adam Peters and solidifying the front office. That's been done. Step 2 was hiring the head coach and figuring out what the direction of this team is going to be. Step 3, staff. Check. On the free agency. Joe Whitt Jr. talked about making quarterbacks have to think and constantly evolving what it is you do. He said, we brought guys here from different coaching trees on purpose because we don't want it to be stale. We don't want it to be what you're accustomed to seeing us do. If you think you're getting the same defense we played in Dallas, good luck. You're sadly mistaken. That's music to my ears because we just came from a regime who hadn't changed their defensive scheme in 30, 40 years. you could argue. We were playing the Bear defense. That's Buddy Ryan from 85, bro. We were playing the Bear defense with Ronald Rivera. The evolution really didn't happen with them. They never changed what they did schematically, and they didn't make it easy on the players. Joe Whitt Jr. said, look, I suffer from dyslexia. So I'll never fault a player for not getting something. If he doesn't get it, that's on us. We got to do a better job of teaching him. One of the things that pissed me off about last season, because I expect this shit from the fans. Fans are fickle. They'll turn their back on you in 2 seconds. That's what fans do. They always go to the next shiny object, and if you don't do something to their liking, they'll put you in the doghouse quick, fast, and in a hurry. I hate it, but it's a part of fan culture. I don't subscribe to it, but it is what it is. So when Emmanuel Forbes, hell, in the preseason, Quan Martin had people getting at him to the point where he had to deactivate his social media. I mean, that's bullshit. And I told y'all as much. Anybody that was getting at him after a preseason game should be ashamed of their damn self. I can't get with that shit. Same thing happened to Emmanuel Forbes. Oh, he's a bust. He's trash. He's this. Because you didn't want him in the first place. You got to get over that shit, man. I didn't want Dwayne Haskins here in Washington, but once he was here, he's a part of the family. I tell y'all that all the time. Y'all got to get over that shit. Get over yourself. 80% of the time, you don't get the players you want via the draft. You don't get guys that you look at and say, man, I would love to have him. Rarely do those guys end up here. So get over yourself. Yeah, I wanted Christian Gonzalez last year. That's no secret. We didn't get him. We got Forbes. All right, let's roll. Let's make do with what we got. Nope. Fans want to throw him under the bus, run over the kid, put it in reverse, run over him again. And the staff was supposed to be the beacon of light. They were supposed to be the ones that said, nah, we're not going to give up on this kid. We drafted him in the first round, and we're going to see this thing through, and we're going to continue to instill confidence in him. Nah, they threw his ass under the bus, too. They benched him. First of all, they were the dum-dums that put him in the position that they put him in. And then when he failed, they looked at the kid and said, well, he's not doing what we taught him to do. He's not doing the techniques that we taught him. Darryl Green tried to warn us before the shit happened. I tell you right now, he's not being coached properly. Give me 10 minutes with him and I'll clean him up. He tried to warn us. We ain't got to worry about that shit with this group. Tell you that right now. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be really, really fun to watch this group. See what they decide to do in free agency. Because as Joe Whitt Jr. talked about it, and so did Kliff Kingsbury, they're evaluating the roster as we speak, which is what you would expect them to do once they finalize the staff. Really refreshing presser from Joe Whitt Jr. Really refreshing stuff. Meanwhile, Kliff Kingsbury, his presser was the polar opposite of Joe Whitt Jr. It reminded me of a Eric Bieniemy versus a Jack Del Rio press conference, because Eric Bieniemy would talk for 25 minutes if you let him. He wouldn't say shit, but he'd talk for 25 minutes, talk in circles, and you'd leave feeling just slightly dumber than when you showed up. Like, am I tripping? Did he actually say anything? Meanwhile, Jack was trying to get in and out. Right. That's kind of how Kliff Kingsbury was, showing up to this thing. Like, look, let me make it abundantly clear. And he did it from the jump. Hey, we're not doing the Raiders thing, so y'all cannot ask me about that. Like Nikki Javala off the bat, she did it in a nice, tactful way too, right? Start off with a little cupcake question. You just loft it up there, a little softball, soft toss. And then at the end of that, you slide in the hard shit, right? So she's like, yeah, just talk about the opportunity here in Washington. And, you just talk about the process of getting here to Washington. Try to slide that shit in at the end. So he made sure right off the top, before he even answered the question, not getting into the specifics of, the process or whatever, which he knew was coming. So he was prepared. And I like his stick-to-itiveness. Like he never wavered. He didn't mince words. And he didn't say more than he needed to say. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm not getting into that. He knows he jerked the Raiders, right? I mean, it's abundantly clear. And I know a lot of y'all were sending me the Pivot podcast with Antonio Pierce. And clearly Antonio Pierce, he didn't feel some type of way, but you could tell that the deal was essentially done. And then Magic picked up the phone. Literally, Magic Johnson intervened. And as AP said, hey, Magic is still out here dishing out assists. Apparently, he still got it. He's still Magic. My question is, do you believe in magic? Apparently, Kliff Kingsbury does. And so he wasn't getting into that. He made it very clear quickly, not doing that. But Kliff Kingsbury was pretty much like, yo, I'm just happy to be here. Or let me do it in my Kliff Kingsbury voice. Hold on. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Yeah. He really was like, look, man, I'm just trying to coach ball. I ain't even really trying to talk about a lot of different stuff. I love the fact that, because I've been trying to tell y'all this, from the moment that he was rumored to be the front runner here when I jumped on live and we talked about Kliff Kingsbury. Miss P says, who knew he had that quiet storm voice, that smooth jazz 105.3. You're listening to the Quiet Storm with Kliff K. Who knew, right? Who knew? Kliff dispelled the notion of this air raid, talk. Like, so many people want to talk about 10 personnel and the importance of that. And I'm like, yo, that's not what he was doing when he was in Arizona. I don't know where this, like, you hear Kliff Kingsbury's name and then you hear air raid and people go crazy. And I'm like, I'm trying to explain to y'all, that's not what he was doing in Arizona. Now, I'm not telling you he wasn't spreading teams out. Everybody in the league spreads teams out. Nobody in the league, maybe except like the Titans and the Browns, like there are few teams in the league that don't get in gun and empty the set. Everybody does that. They may get to it in different ways. They may have different rules and things that they do. But all in all, everybody in the league is a copycat league spreading you out. But when it's time to run the ball, and he said, I learned quick. And he talked about the Super Bowl, and he's like, in a 4-minute offense, you got to be able to run it. In a 2-minute offense, you got to be able to throw. And, as fans, we often make the game more complicated than it needs to be. And I try to always tell y'all, this football shit really ain't that hard. There's nuance and subtleties to it that can be difficult, The more you do it, the easier it becomes. The more work and time you put in, the easier it comes to you. But this football shit really ain't that hard. Like, people make this shit so much harder than it needs to be. And those people irritate my soul. Jack Del Rio was one of those dudes that made shit harder than it needed to be. Eric Bieniemy definitely made football harder than it needed to be. Both Kliff Kingsbury and Joe Whitt Jr. both said, in some way, shape, or form, right, in their own way, said, hey, we gonna get our best players involved. Now, again, Eric Bieniemy, and this is what happens when you're so excited that you don't open up your ears, right? We were so excited about Scott Turner being gone and getting this guy from the Chiefs who had been a part of 5 consecutive trips to the AFC Championship game and coming off of his second Super Bowl. We were so excited that we weren't actually listening. We heard what he said. But let me make sure I spit some game to y'all. Hearing and listening are two different things. I can hear somebody having a conversation upstairs. But to listen means you can actually hear the words being said and interpret that and actually listen for content and substance. We didn't listen when Eric Bieniemy said, I don't care nothing about them stats and all that shit y'all get excited about. This ain't fantasy football. We collectively dragging our asses across the finish line. And he meant that shit. My scheme. That's what we running. Those are the worst coaches. Those are the ones that make it tough. Unnecessarily. These my type of coaches right here. The guys that go, hey, and I know Kliff Kingsbury. Okay. I know Kliff Kingsbury. I go all the way back with Kliff to the Texas A&M days with Johnny Manziel. All right. When he said, hey, I'm going to get out of the way and let Johnny do Johnny. Johnny would come to practice Dunsky. Johnny would come hammered from the night before. And Kliff would be like, hey, he good. Don't worry about him. He good. I got him. Hey, Johnny, bro, come on, man. Work with me. And Johnny won the Heisman Trophy. Right? Kliff knows where his bread is buttered. So if you tell Kliff, hey, you got Terry, you got Jahan, you got Curtis if he's back, these are your studs, trust me, he gonna get them to rock. Trust me. I already told you what he did for James Conner's career. I already told you. Had me looking at James Conner in a totally different light. What you think he about to do for B-Rob? I'm excited for B-Rob. This shit finna be lit. This staff that they put together. It's crazy. It's crazy. Let's go to that staff. Speaking of which, let's do that right now. Let's take a look. Let's go over here and make a social media maneuver real quick. So they posted the official staff today. So we know who the 2024-2025 Washington Commanders staff is going to be. This is what it looks like. A couple of new names up here, right? Dan Quinn, head coach. Know him. Sarah Hogan. This was a hire that was made like 2-3 days ago. that we just got wind of. Coaching chief of staff. Like, we don't really need to get into all of that stuff. We've become so obsessive that we be worrying about titles of people who, in the grand scheme of things, they help. And everybody who's got a job that has a title in that building contributes to winning. But you, me, and everybody else knowing the actual job description of Sarah Hogan's coaching chief of staff does nothing in terms of helping us understand how this team's going to win come week 1 of the 2024 NFL regular season. But that's how far we've come, or how far we've gone, however your perspective is, glass half full versus glass half empty. As a fan, we are starving for every piece of information we can get our hands on. It's crazy. It really is. Pete O'Hannigan, player development coach. So that means our good old buddy, old pal, Malcolm Blacken, is no longer here because, if I'm not mistaken, that was his job description and title, player development coach. And I liked Malcolm Blacken. Maybe they gave him a different title and he's still here. My guess is he's gone. Now we go to the offensive side of the football. Let's get to the real brass tacks of things, shall we? Kliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator. Or Kliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator. Here to turn around the Commanders' offense. Yeah, just like that. You got to sound like Devontae on one of them old Jodeci songs. You know what I'm saying? That's how you got. That's the vibe you got to give off when you hitting that cliff. You got that. Nah, you got to go. It's got to be. What's the name of my group? H-Town. You know, Dino, Shabazz. Yeah. Kick the vamp. David, blow, 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 blow. You know what? I remember David Blau. So this is so random. You know how my brain works. It's just wires are all over the place in my brain. So certain things that shouldn't retain space in my brain do. I remember a Thanksgiving game with the Lions playing against the Chicago Bears. Both teams were absolutely horrible. And the Lions were like on their 7th string quarterback, which was David Blau, 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 Blau. And he actually didn't play poorly, and he gave the Lions a chance, but in the end, he was David Blau, 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 and he threw a back-breaking interception and they lost. But he played well. What did I tell y'all the other day? The best who make coaches, or the former who make the best coaches, rather. Kliff Kingsbury said that he had him in Arizona, and he was so impressed with him. I'm telling y'all, the backup quarterbacks be on it. They be on it. Andre Coleman, offensive assistant. I don't know who the hell that is. Don't know who that is. and probably one of those young up and coming dudes that almost like quality control. But now we got an offensive quality control guy at the bottom. I don't even know what an offensive assistant is. I guess he just helps out with the offensive side of football. Good for Andre. Bobby Ingram back as wide receivers coach. And I saw Jahan Dotson put an emoji with praying hands. So that's an endorsement from the receivers. You can always tell how respected someone is by the social media activity once word gets out that they're no longer there or they're being retained or anything of the sort. When EB was officially let go, did you see one post about anybody having his back or being like distraught that they moved on from him? I didn't. Anyway, O-line Bobby Johnson, offensive line coach, as we know, he talked about why he hired O-line Bobby Johnson. And he talked about the respect that he had for him and several of his other stops. I've made this clear that he's been respected in other stops, has O-line Bobby Johnson. Now, does it always end well? Not exactly. But the guy knows what he's doing. It's to what extent does he know what he's doing, and can he coach up guys and get them to buy in? That's the real question. We'll see. Brian Johnson, not to be confused with O-line Bobby Johnson. Interesting title here, assistant head coach / offensive pass game coordinator. Now, we knew he was going to be the OPGC. You down with OPGC? Yeah, you know me. Who's down with OPGC? We didn't know he was going to be the assistant head coach, though. That's how they probably got him here. Again, I'm always fascinated with the relevance and the weight that assistant head coach carries. For some people, I think that is an important title and they don't just give it to anybody. For others, you want it? It's yours. How is that title viewed around the league? I would love to know. Would love to know. But Brian Johnson is going to be the offensive passing game coordinator. Anthony Lynn, run game coordinator, running backs coach. Remember, I told y'all yesterday that I thought he was going to double as the running backs coach. Now, we never got confirmation of that. But I told you they didn't hire another running backs coach. So that made me believe they were going to give him not only the run game coordinator position, but also give him the running backs room, because that's what he does best. We got confirmation today. And apparently, Anthony Lynn went to Texas Tech. Obviously, Kliff Kingsbury went to Texas Tech. So in Kliff's mind, he was like, oh, yeah. Another Texas Tech Raider. I know how we do it. With a 9-5. Because it's like that, you know. But we ain't through. Kick the vamp. I'm excited about Anthony Lynn. I really am. One of my favorite hires of any of these assistants. That was a really good get. Tavita Pritchard back as quarterbacks coach. I like Tavita. I told y'all that last year. I like him a lot. I like him a lot. David Rye is the tight ends coach. I'm interested to see what he's able to do. He seems like a really interesting guy. I watched like 4 different interviews with him, going all the way back to his offensive when he was an intern at Iowa. He's got a YouTube channel that he started when he was an intern at Iowa. And I watched some of those videos, and I watched him become the coordinator at Vandy. I watched some of those videos. I watched him ride in a golf cart with some random lady who works for the Arizona Cardinals who was interviewing him. And I watched that. So I got a lot of David Rye content. Why? I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me sometimes. You know, this is a tight ends coach, not the offensive coordinator. Why am I watching 4 different videos with this guy? I don't know. Stop asking, okay? I feel like I know David Rye now, when I really don't. But I'm rooting like hell for him. Darnell Stapleton, assistant offensive line. Don't know Darnell, but I like these young guys that they're bringing in. I'm assuming he's young. Shane Tobe, the name rings a bell probably because Dave Tobe, I would bet any amount of money is his dad. I would bet I don't know Shane Tobe from Adam Job, but I'd bet you that that's his son, because that's how you break in, as quality control. Bet you Shane Tobe is somehow related. My guess is it's his son. We move to the defensive side of the football. Joe Whitt Jr., obviously the defensive coordinator. George Banco, defensive quality control. And somebody sent me a piece of information, a tweet, I believe, that talked about where George Banco came from, which is Alabama under Nick Saban. And again, this is how thinked up we are. When people are getting excited about defensive quality control hires, what the hell are we doing, guys and gals? What are we doing? Seriously. Now, if George Banco turns into the next Sean McVay in 7 years, from now, all right, cool. We know where he got his humble beginnings in the NFL at, but he's defensive quality control. What are we doing here? All right. Yeah, he came from Alabama. I'm excited about that because he learned from Nick Saban. That's great, but come on. Come on. Shout out to George for getting an opportunity, getting his foot, in the door in the NFL. Hopefully he makes the most of this opportunity. Tommy Donatel is a guy that we actually can talk about as the defensive backs coach. We talked about him briefly yesterday. Was with the Chargers the last 3 years. Before that, he was in Seattle. Really did some good things with the Chargers. Michael Davis was the name that I was trying to think of yesterday, and I couldn't. Michael Davis. They had some good defensive backs, and I like the way that they played, even though they gave up a lot in Los Angeles. Defensively, I think it was more because of the scheme and not the individual players and how they were being taught, but rather how they were deploying those players. Tommy Donatel is a guy that Joe Whitt Jr. talked about specifically and said, we were really excited about bringing him in here because we want him to work with some of these young guys. And trust and believe Joe Whitt Jr. is going to be looking over the entire defense, but he's going to be watching that secondary very, very closely. Sharif Floyd. We talked about him yesterday, assistant defensive line coach, or 2 days ago, rather, I believe it was. Assistant defensive. He got here with O-line Bobby Johnson. So I think that was 3 days ago now, if I'm not mistaken. So then you get this run on former players, right? Sharif Floyd, William Gay was the corner that I was trying to think of, who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Was really good for the Steelers. I think he went to Louisville, if I'm not mistaken. Played probably 9-10 years in the league. Had a really solid NFL career. I love it. Assistant defense. Like, you know what he is, right? Let me see if y'all picking up what they over here putting down. Let me see if y'all picking up what they over here putting down. Who is William Gay for us? Raise your hand. Come on. I know somebody knows the answer. Let me see if y'all on it. Like y'all supposed to be on it. Who is he? I'm not seeing any answers. Come on, guys. Tommy T. Ding, 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 ding. He's our Al Harris. That is exactly who William Gay is supposed to be here in Washington. Former NFL corner that isn't that far removed from being a player in the league, can relate to these young guys, comes in here and is an instant hit with the young players and is able to really get into them and get them to grow into the position of being an NFL defensive back. He's our Al Harris. You see what they're doing over here? Ryan Kerrigan kept on staff as an assistant linebacker / pass rush specialist. Good for Ryan, man. We all like him. He's one of us. Glad to see him back. Ken Norton Jr., another one of those hires that I was really, really excited about. I know one thing about Ken Norton Jr. He knows how to coach linebackers. Similar to the same way I feel about Anthony Lynn coaching the running backs and getting the run game tightened up. Ken Norton Jr. knows what he's doing. Just like Joe Whitt knows what he's doing in the secondary. John Pagano, senior defensive assistant. We talked about him the other day. Somebody asked me about, is it possible that they've got too many cooks in the kitchen? And my response was, in football, there's almost no such thing unless everyone is doing their own thing. Then you absolutely can have too many cooks in the kitchen. But if everybody's aligned, if everybody's on the same accord, and you heard Joe Whitt Jr. talk about wanting ideas from everybody, which is why they brought so many different coaches from different backgrounds. Remember when Dan Quinn was first hired, I said the first thing I want to see is how he puts together this staff. Is he just hiring a bunch of his boys? Because we just went through that. Well, they didn't do that. They went out and got dudes they'd never worked with before, but respect from afar. Former players, coaches they've coached against, guys they bumped into back in 2012 at an awards ceremony. Yeah, that's the shit we on. Will it work? Don't know. Don't know. But it beats the alternative, which is to stick with the same old dumb rhetoric shit that we've been doing that hasn't been working. He talked about Jason Simmons, defensive pass game coordinator. And him and Jason apparently go back a ways. There's Joe Whitt Jr. and Jason Simmons. Apparently they go back a little ways. And he talked about the opportunity that he's getting in Washington. And, you know, rarely do I make it about race, but I don't run away and I don't shy away from race because it exists. And Joe Whitt Jr. talked about that chip on his shoulder. He's not going to say it. I'll say it for him. But he feels like he got passed over because he's black. And nope, I wasn't an ex-player. So, you know, I don't resonate. And sometimes it's just about who you know. That's how you get your opportunity. And unfortunately, he didn't know the right people. All he did was do his job to the best of his abilities. And we've all been taught that if you do your very best, you can do anything you want to do. You can achieve anything. That's the shit they tell us when we ate. That's a damn lie, though. That shouldn't stop you from wanting to do your best. But at the end of the day, we've all heard this before, and the shit is so true. Don't let anybody lie to you. It ain't what you know. It's who you know. Now, what you know helps. Don't be no dumbass now, okay? Add value when you get an opportunity to add value. But it's hard to get up the ladder, man. It's hard to get where you're trying to go if you don't know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. He was talking to Jason Simmons, and he said, man, I'm excited about this opportunity. I've been waiting a long time for this, and Dan Quinn finally blessed me. I ain't going to let him down. That's what I got from his pressers. I'm not going to let Dan Quinn down. Dan entrusted in me this opportunity that I've been waiting on since 2015 when I should have got it the first time. I've been ready. I've been ready. Jason Simmons coming in here as the defensive pass game coordinator. I'm excited about him too. I saw the work that was done with the Raiders last year. I told you the story already about my buddy who's a Raiders fan and their situation last year, and he did wonders with them. And then Daryl Tapp getting an opportunity to be a defensive line coach after being an assistant in San Francisco with the 49ers. So, and then you finish up with Larry Izzo. L to the Izzo is our special teams coordinator. That's the anthem. Get your damn hands up. It's a hell of a staff, if I may say so myself. It's a hell of a staff. Chip. All right. Let's get to the comment section. Feel like if this is done correctly, these boys are about to be like double trouble. Y'all remember the video game? See, I'm showing my age. Remember Double Dragons? Remember that video game? That was random as hell. Anyway, I digress. Robbie J. Spurgeon. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB. Bob, y'all know what to do. Show Robbie some love. Welcome him with open arms. Robbie, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you. Hexix Gaming. Been a member for 3 months. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, this feels different is an old saying here, but there you go, right? That's one of the classic lines that we've used multiple times. to the point now where it feels sort of big bad wolfish, right? Feels like the girl who cried wolf, right? It's almost to the point now where people don't believe it. I don't believe you. You need more people. I get it. I'm going to continue to use that line because it is relevant more now than ever before. And so I'm going to continue to preach the gospel that is, hey, shit's different around here now, man. See, I told y'all, you know, I took sociology, I took psychology, criminal justice, all that shit is intertwined, right? And there was this one theory that they taught us called the broken windows theory, all right? And it states that in order to keep people in the mindset of self-policing and keeping their community safe and clean and orderly, you can't let things deteriorate. For example, if there's a broken down car on the street and it's missing a tire, that might invite somebody to then come into the neighborhood and say, well, they don't care about that car. Windows are broken in that car. And then there's an abandoned house 2 houses away from that car, and that looks to be in pretty bad shape. The grass is as tall as I am walking down the street. And so you see that and you see the car and you're thinking, well, they won't mind if I hang out on the corner, spray a little graffiti. And then that turns into, hey, I'm going to post up here, slang a little dope. And all of a sudden, it went from a car that was broken down on 2 flats and an abandoned house to graffiti to now, you know, broken glass on the sidewalk to now it looks like no one cares. So now we can do whatever the hell we want to do here. That's how it felt in Washington for a very long time. It felt like it started with Dan Snyder's ass coming in here and effing shit up. And then it just got progressively worse to the point where it felt like anything and everything would happen here. And so when you would say it's different, no, it really wasn't. No, it wasn't different. I wanted it to be different. You wanted it to be different, but it wasn't because Dan Snyder was still here. And no matter what we tried to do, that wasn't going to ever change. It's different now because how many of these press conferences have we heard where the person acknowledges the owner? Unsolicited, by the way. The ownership group, the front office. Nobody asked him about Josh Harris and the vision and everything that's going on here. Nobody asked Kliff Kingsbury about that. The first answer he gave was, I wanted to be a part of this staff with Dan Quinn, who I respect a lot. You know, the ownership group here, you know, this is a really good situation that they're building. What? That all that is foreign to us. Anyway, I digress. This feels different, and I'm going to continue to push that narrative because it is different. That's going to be my line. This feels different, ... Then you have to do a pause for effect, like you done. Hell, you could even add a look away for added effect. This feels different. because it is different. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, big part for me was Kliff saying his system isn't prototypical air raid. What's your thoughts on what he and Lynn are trying to build on? Oh, that's what I said was the most impactful thing that he said, which was, bro, this air raid thing that everybody's trying to throw on me, I appreciate it because I learned it from Mike Leach, and he's like the godfather of the air raid. And, I did some really good things with it in college, but my scheme is ever evolving and changing. And I'm always looking at the best offenses in college and the NFL, and I'm trying to add those components to my offense. And we've talked about the NFL is a copycat league. Everybody's stealing from everybody. You take it and then you make it your own. Kliff Kingsbury has been doing that. And that's why I said when I heard people spreading this news about, the 10 personnel, and I'm like, that's not what he was doing, though. 10 personnel means you're taking the tight end completely off the field. He wasn't doing that in his second year in Arizona, nor his third year. And he made sure he told everybody, hey, I can tell you this right now. By the time I left Arizona, we weren't anywhere near the top of the league in passing attempts, okay? And I tried to explain that to y'all, but I'm glad he clarified that. Like, we running the ball over here, man. I don't know what they told y'all we was doing, but we running the ball over here. All right, partner. I love it. Because now I'm going to be interested to see how they run the ball. But Anthony Lynn is a get under center type of guy. He wants to get under center and run the football. So I'm interested to see if we add those components. One of the reasons I fell in love with Ben Johnson's offense is because it was so diverse in nature. They needed to get in the gun and spread you out. They could. If they wanted to run from the gun, they could. If they wanted to get under center, go duo, they could. If they wanted to go outside zone, they could. If they wanted to go toss, sweep, pitch, jet sweep, they could do that. They could give you a little bit of everything. That's, you remember on Madden, I haven't played Madden in well over a decade. But there used to be a defense that you could pick, and it was called multiple D. And it was a mashup of a bunch of different defensive schemes that were on the game. It was sort of like Bill Belichick's defense, but he didn't give EA the license to use his name, so they just called it multiple D. That's kind of how Ben Johnson's offense felt like to me. Felt like just a mashup of a bunch of different offensive philosophies all wrapped up in one. And remember, he didn't come from a coaching tree. So his offense was picking up bits and pieces and parts from different offensive schemes around the league and things that he had seen in his travels. I'm hoping that Kliff Kingsbury is bringing a little bit of that to Washington. Man, I sent you guys down a video game rabbit hole, I see. I'm seeing Power Stones and Soul Calibur. Oh, man. Yikes. Daryl McFatter. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Daryl writes, Joe said, if you say a player can't learn, you can't coach. Seemed like a shot at Ron with the Haskins situation. I don't think it was a direct shot at anybody, but you hear that all the time, though, and you see it. Even if you don't hear a coach say it, their actions display that. Last year, and that's why I talked about and brought up the rookie first-round pick from last year, Emmanuel Forbes Jr., because they kind of treated him like he wasn't getting it. So they sat him down, which is stupid. That message right there resonates with me because my wife is in education. And we have these conversations all the time, and she talks to me about the disadvantaged youth and how they're cast aside or they're told that they can't do this, and teachers are too lazy to see what they can do instead of talking about what they can't do all the time. And my wife, she's one of those solution-based type of people where, look, don't talk to me about what they can't do. Let's figure out a solution as to how we can get them to do it. What is complaining about what they can't do going to help? Not going to help the kids, which is what the ultimate goal is, right? So I always have a perspective of, if you're a coach, your job is to get the message across. It is to get the buy-in. It is to get players to be able to digest what it is you're trying to get accomplished. And we heard over and over again with Jack Del Rio's scheme in particular, it was too complex. There were too many changes, a shift, and Joe Whitt Jr. talked about this in his press conference. Like, he's like, it's already complicated enough. And then you add in shifts and adjustments and motions. And when they do that, the offenses do that with the hope that a simple motion from a 2x1, right, or a 2x2 to a 3x1 is going to change your whole defensive look and what your principles are. Now people have to think and communications have to take place. Just one simple guy going from the left side of the formation to the right side and making it now a 3x1 F's up everything. Now you're confused. You're trying to communicate. They snap the ball. They run a simple, shallow, a mesh concept, and everybody's all effed up. Somebody, and they over top of that, a deep over route, and he's wide ass open. No communication, right? He said, why are you making it hard? Simplify it. We want these guys playing fast. I remember saying that about Jamin Davis in his rookie season. Why would you even teach him all three positions and play him at middle linebacker where he clearly isn't comfortable? Why would you do that to a rookie who's supposed to be fast? You're slowing him down. It took them like 13 weeks of his rookie season to realize, hey, maybe we should move him outside. Duh. Mike Wood Folk, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mike, thank you for the super chat. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy Chris, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, hey Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always. Devin Hester is in the Hall of Fame this year. Is it a lost cause for Jacoby and Mitchell, especially the latter being the number one in kick and punt return yards and second most in all-purpose to Rice? As the years go by, Jacoby will get in. What I fear the most is he'll pass away before he actually gets to smell his roses, right? That's what I fear. He'll get in as a senior entry. We see guys get in. They usually let two senior guys in every year, right? Randy Gradishar is one of them this year, and I forgot who the other one is. He'll get in. My problem is it might not be for another 7 years, and he might not be here. That's the shit that'll piss me off because he wants that more than anything else. And for him to get that would mean everything to him. If he passes on and he doesn't have a gold jacket, it'll break his heart. And I would never forgive the Hall of Fame for that if that happens. Now, as far as Brian Mitchell is concerned, I don't think he's getting in. And it's a damn shame. But the longer his time passes and the longer that we get away from his playing career, the further away the people that are making the decisions on who gets in, the less they'll remember about Brian Mitchell. They don't know him. They don't know Brian Mitchell, Adam from Eve. So, and just like I said with Jacoby, he might get in 20 years from now, but he should have gotten in already. It's ridiculous, right? But it is what it is. He should have gotten in by now. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Love that we have a number of succession options in case Kliff gets another head coaching job. Very happy to see an assistant QB coach. I love that they're planning for the future as well. That was something that the last staff failed to do. They were very short-sighted here for many, many years. Many, many years. They were very, very short-sighted. And in this league that we talk about all the time as being a war of attrition, having a short-sighted approach is one of the single easiest ways to get beat. You've got to constantly be planning for the future. And that's what you heard from Joe Whitt Jr., literally. That's what you heard from Kliff Kingsbury. He said the NFL and football, it's cyclical, right? Offenses are always advancing and always, trying to catch up with the defenses, and defenses are always trying to do the same. And if you ever stay stagnant for 1 second, they're going to catch you and they're going to pass you. You always got to be evolving and constantly changing. We didn't hear that from the last group. And that doesn't just, to me, that doesn't just represent how you should approach the roster or, the product on the field. That's how you should be approaching your staff. Because if you're any good, people are coming. Teams are coming. Look at the 49ers. Every year, 3 to 5 of their staff members get picked off at a time. Every year. Rand Carthen got picked away from their front office last year by the Titans. We took Adam Peters this year. We saw how many assistants just blew out of there. We took a couple of them. The Saints took one of them. They lost their defensive coordinator 2 out of the last 3 years prior to this year. You got to be ready. Bobby Slowick went with one of those assistants. Jeff Albrecht went with, Robert Saleh. Like, you got to be prepared. And Joe Whitt Jr. talked about that. He said, when we won the Super Bowl in Green Bay, we had like 15 to 18 dudes on IR. And so the backups became the starters. You got to be prepared. And this staff seems like they're prepared. For what? I don't know. But a wise man once told me, you ain't got to get ready if you stay ready. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, Chris. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, hey, Lou, 3 questions. 1, what offensive and defensive player do you expect to have the biggest jump this season with new OC and DC and WAP? 2, how do you think Whitt uses John Allen and Daron Payne differently? And how aggressively do you expect play calling to be to force turnovers? So the first one, the biggest jump, I've already talked about that on the defensive side. And I've kind of alluded to what I think is going to happen on offense, but the biggest jump on the defensive side, I think, is going to be in the secondary. And it's going to either be Quan Martin or Emmanuel Forbes. because Martin had 2 picks last season and did some good things. I think it'll be harder for people to recognize the growth. With Forbes, he's at the bottom. There's no way but up for him. So anything he does, he did have a pick. A lot of people forget that, but anything that he does is going to be like, oh shit, he actually isn't trash, right? Because people view him as a bust already. They're using the B word with that young man, which is crazy. So I think it's Forbes, just off of sheer opportunities that he'll get because he was a first-round pick last year, and he can't be any worse. Offensively, I've said it's Brian Robinson Jr. I just think I'm convinced with Anthony Lynn coming here and Kliff Kingsbury and what he did, and I've said this 80 million times, you're probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but what he did with James Conner, I think Brian Robinson is a slimmer version of James Conner. Quietly, he can catch the football. I didn't think James Conner was much of a pass catcher. He shocked the hell out of me. And he can run the football, and he's physical, and he can. Brian Robinson should have had 500 or 600 yard performances last season. He was robbed of that by Eric Bieniemy and his play calling. Should have 5 or 6 easy 100-yard games. I think he's going to see a lot of work this year, and I think he's going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries. The Real Benjamin. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Quinn is who we needed. We got lucky. And I said that earlier. Sometimes what you want and what you need are two different things. A wise woman once told me, what you want and what you need are two different things. And we got what we needed. And now let's see what we do. Again, the job is not done, but it's a hell of a start. It's a hell of a start. Life, no life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, when Whitt leans into the microphone, you listen. Some gems were dropped. Also, Cardinals fans called David Rye Gruden Jr. LOL. Not gonna lie, they look alike. He does look like him a little bit. I will give you that. He does look like him. And then, he had on that Bucks shirt, that didn't help and do him any favors. And then he puts on, he's a visor guy, right? And Gruden was a visor guy as well. So he definitely, I could see the resemblance there for sure. But I'm telling you, when Joe Whitt Jr. was talking, I'm telling you, I was right here. I was just like this. I was so damn close to the monitor after like 14 minutes of his presser, which was 24 minutes and some change. My neck started to stiffen up on my ass. I was so close. I was like, shit. I had to back up a little bit, twist my neck around. Like, bro, you got to back up off the screen. But I was so captivated. So captivated. King of the North. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the North writes, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, King of the North writes, I like the coaching staff, but it definitely isn't anything I'll brag about to other teams' fans. DQ has a real test of leadership with all these former coordinators and head coaches. That's a lot of alphas. Could be friction, ? I don't think so. Anytime you bring a bunch of guys who used to be the guy in the same building, there definitely could be bumping of heads. But when you make it abundantly clear what the vision is before you hire people, what you got to understand is the NFL it's a coaching fraternity, right? And you hear coaches talk about it all the time. Dan Quinn even talked about it when he talked about EV, right? It's a fraternity. And either you know guys or you know of them, you respect them. But here's the thing. You never want to burn bridges in the NFL. You never want to burn bridges because you just never know how you're going to get your next opportunity. Right? You never know. So it wouldn't behoove you to come in and undermine someone who gave you an opportunity. Because you don't know how it's going to go. Even if you're somewhat dismissive of the head coach, but one of the assistants see it, he ends up getting a job and you would like to work for him. And he's like, nah, I saw the shit you did when we were in Washington together. I'm not hiring your ass. I know you won't do it to me on some genuine shit. I don't foresee that being a problem because everybody came here with you heard what Kliff Kingsbury said when they asked him if Dan Quinn wants to be involved in the offense, how much of that will he's like, bro, he can do whatever the hell he want to do. If he tell me he want to do this, that's what we're doing. It's his team. End of discussion, right? And that's how everybody should be. And I think that's how everybody is. Anthony Lynn has been a head coach, but Anthony Lynn has been more of an assistant than a head coach in his career. It's not like he was Ron Rivera and been a head coach for double-digit years in this league, and now you've been reduced to being a coordinator. Anthony Lynn was a head coach for like, what, 5 or 6 years max with the Chargers. Interim head coach with the Bills for a half a season maybe. He's been a assistant more than he's been a head coach. And that goes for everybody on this staff. There's not one guy on this staff that's been a head coach in this league longer than Dan Quinn was. Anthony Lynn might be the exception to that rule. Everybody else that's had a chance, they weren't a head coach longer than Dan Quinn was in the league. So, as far as bragging to other teams' fans about the staff, fans are going to be fans. We're going to do that anyway. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to try to convince them that it's different because they're not trying to hear that shit. I'm not going to waste my breath. I know it's different. I know what we over here building. I'm going to just do that shit behind the scenes. A wise man once told me, the strong move silent, the weak start riots. The strong move silent, the weak start riots. I was also told G's move in silence. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to just work behind the scenes. All we've heard is that Dan Quinn is the alpha of all alphas. He's the leader of all leaders. So if there's one guy that I think could put all of these different coaches in one big pot and get them to come together and make shit happen, it's Dan Quinn. So not really concerned about that. The Real Benjamin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Quan Martin going off with JWJ. I said it the moment he was on board when we officially got word. I said, I was on the Burgundy Zone podcast and I told them, they asked me that same exact question. And that's when we just found out about Joe Whitt Jr. and Dan Quinn. And I said, it's the secondary. I went straight to Quan Martin. I bypassed Emmanuel Forbes, but I think it's going to be Forbes for a lot of people because he was so bad as a rookie. But Quan Martin has some talent, some real talent. Not that Emmanuel Forbes Jr. doesn't. King of the North, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I will never proclaim DQ as who we needed, until I see wins. That's just me. I forgot the rule about talk being cheap last year and bought in 100% on EB after his press conference. Lesson learned. That's a fair assessment. I don't have any qualms about you doing it that way whatsoever, because ultimately that's what this staff is going to be judged on, wins and losses. This is the time of the year that excitement rules the day. I mean, if you can't be excited in February into March into April, then when can you be excited? This is the time when you allow your imagination to run wild of what it can potentially be. Now, how far you take it is up to you individually as a fan, but that's what it's about. That's what being a fan is all about. I think he was who we needed, but that'll play itself out. What we didn't need was a guy that couldn't put together a staff. Mike McDonald is still struggling to put together a staff in Seattle as we speak right now. And I'm not saying that he won't put together a fantastic staff when it's all said and done, but the news has been trickling out slow over there on that side of the coast. News has been trickling in pretty slow about moves they're making. I'm real solid over here. We're done. We're done. We got our staff complete. I bought in too on EB, by the way, last year. But you know that, though. That's not going to stop me from buying in again. I just know better. I know better than to, and again, EB's situation last year was different than this situation this year. The only similarity between the two situations is that he was here and he was new. That was it. But everything else is different. Nothing's the same. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, you did see, this is why I told you about this drinking on a Thursday night and then trying to super chat. What did I tell you about that, man? Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, during your chat with your fellow commanders, you gave me 1 month credit. What the F? I don't know what you're talking about. But then again, I rarely do. Please speak English, Duncan. Please. You sound like you have a gripe or a beef with me. I would like to resolve this beef so that the energy and aura that you're giving off is that of positive vibes. I would like to correct the action if there's something that I did, but I don't know what the hell I did, because you speak in some kind of dialect that I've never heard of before. Anyway, Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Ron B writes, Lou, can you imagine how excited Harris and Peters were when DQ laid out his plan during those head coaching interviews? I don't know how much of the plan we've watched unfold. Like, he told them who he wanted for his coordinators. I don't think he could have literally gone into detail about what he wanted to do with his staff, though. But maybe he had an idea of like how he would like for the staff to come together. Like, I want to go out and get different guys that from different backgrounds and trees so that we can diversify what it is we did in Dallas and add to it and change some things. And I think he might have gone about it that way. He couldn't have said, I want to hire David Rye from Tampa. Like, he didn't get into specifics. The only two, coaches he probably told them, they coming with me. was Kliff Kingsbury and Joe Whitt Jr. But this is why they said his interview was outstanding, right? Because he had a vision, he had a plan, because he has done this before and he learned from some of the mistakes that he made. And you remember in his presser, he said the 5 words that haunted him: if I get another chance, right? Well, he got that chance and he didn't miss, right? He knocked the interview out, and here we are. King of the North, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of the North writes, I'm sorry, video channel. That's a good one. Hey, first of all, hey, Duncan is my guy, but drunken right. That's a good that's a good one. Aha. Oh man, you guys are hilarious. King of the North, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Philly fans, quote, SB in double-digit wins last 2 years, close quote. Dallas fans, NFC, quote, NFC East champs in double-digit wins last 3 years. Make sure you get that right. They always correct me when I try to give them credit for 2. They went 12-5 3 years in a row with Dan Quinn once he got there. Washington fans, quote, have you seen our staff? Close quote, LOL. We will find anything to give us hope. Make us relevant, DQ. That's the hope, right? That's the hope. Is he'll be able to come in here and make us relevant again. And, you know, that's why I know that they've had conversations about it, and the vision is somewhat aligned, because, again, unprompted responses from every single person, except I don't know if Kliff Kingsbury talked about coming here and restoring anything, but Joe Whitt Jr. did. Obviously, Dan Quinn did. Adam Peters did. And Josh Harris, that's been his message since day one, is, you know, we're stewards of this, and we got to make sure that we restore Washington to its rightful place in the NFL as one of the pillars of this beautiful sport known as football, the National Football League. We were once the preeminent franchise. It'll take a lot for us to get back to that, but to just be in that vein would be incredible. And brick by brick, right? One thing at a time. And that's why I've been preaching P&P, patience and perseverance. This isn't going to happen overnight. All I'm looking for right now is a competitive group that show the signs of, hey, we got something cooking over here. We got something. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Kliff was short, seat, and to the point. Had no time for BS. Love it. Whitt's interview was electrifying. Man, gave me goosebumps. Yeah, Kliff was like, yeah, no, I'm going to answer your question. I'm not talking about the Vegas situation, and we moving on, right? Whitt was definitely, like, Whitt gave me the vibes of, I've been waiting for this opportunity. I'm not going to blink. I'm not going to flinch. I'm going to show these bastards what the game was missing. That's what it felt like to me. CJ Shoots Photo. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. CJ Shoots Photo. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, after today's presser, I'm ready to put me in, Coach Whitt. I'm ready. Put me in, Coach Whitt. Let's do this. I'm in my mid-40s, 6'1", 200 pounds, and way out of shape. I don't care. I want to get violent. Hashtag hell yeah, hashtag impressed. He definitely talked about, he was promoting violence for sure, of the good variety. And that's something that we just haven't done here at a high enough rate. I've long admired the Cowboys defense from afar. How many times have I told you, man, Dan Quinn has that defense flying around. And I kept saying, I need him to get a job so he can get out of Dallas so that defense can go back to being ass. I just didn't expect the job that he would get to be here in Washington. I knew he'd get an opportunity somewhere, though. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Wrights. Not tonight, though, my man. Yeah. We still trying to figure out what it is you're talking about, but at least that one was somewhat coherent. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. I got Mr. Ron B writes, OG triple OG. You can tell Whitt doesn't overlook the smallest of details, like asking Nikki and Nick Fortier or Sam Fortier, excuse me, for their names before fielding their questions. I remember, and that's a great point, Mr. Ron B. And I told you guys when he first got the job, I had watched that interview when he was talking about being very detail oriented and how that's his job, right? Is, Dan Quinn celebrating a pick six and jumping up and down, high-fiving everybody. And he's like, I'm the guy that's trying to get everybody together to figure out who's going on special teams because, Deron Bland is on the kickoff coverage unit and he just got a pick six, 77 yards. He can't get on that team and cover. He's got to go get the oxygen mask. So I'm trying to figure out who's going to take his spot. Like, he's down to the smallest, most finite detail. And when you go to a new city, you're going to be dealing with these reporters all the time. So you want to be able to put a name to a face, excuse me. So that's why it's important that when you address me, I need to know your name. So I know if somebody says something crazy about me and it's Nikki Javala, I know exactly who it is. I would have done the same thing. Like, oh, and you are? Because I'm petty, one, but two, I need to keep receipts. You saw what Brad Holmes, I told you I love what Brad Holmes did. You know why? He kept receipts. Too often people love to write shit and act as if I'm just doing my job. Okay. Well, I got a job to do too. And if you think you're going to get to call me out when it's not justified, unjustifiably so, before you even see how the draft class plays out, then I'm firing back once these boys prove to be good. And Joe Whitt Jr. is making sure, let me learn y'all names. Now, the easiest way to avoid having a nasty story written about you when shit isn't going well is to make friends in the media. At least if they're going to hit you with something nasty, they're going to call you first and let you know, hey, just letting you know, got a nasty hit piece coming out tomorrow, just so you got a heads up. If you want to go on record, you wanted to give me, a couple quotes, I'd love it. If not, I just wanted to give you a heads up. Nothing slides, man. When you about principle, nothing slides. As a wise man once said, if you owe me $10, you ain't giving me $9. Mr. Ron B. Or Joe Rockhead, been a member for 26 months. Who writes, might change my name to Joe Whitthead Jr. Even. See what you did there. See what you did there. I like it a lot. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. OG Triple OG writes, double up, My mistake. I misspelled his name, Whitt. Like I said, the little details. I see what you did there too, right? Little small details. AJSTP003. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, wise man once said, drink too much Kool-Aid, you get diabetes. We'll sit in the fridge for now. Again, that's a fair assessment. That's a fair way to go about business. And I won't wag my finger at anybody that is taking a wait and see approach. That you are well within your rights as a fan to do that without anybody having anything to say to you about it. The only thing that I ever have asked is that you just be patient and allow this thing to play itself out, however it's going to play itself out, instead of condemning it. And as long as you're not doing that, I got no issues with you. It's the people that swear that this isn't going to work and that Dan Quinn's a hack and this staff is trash, this, that, and the third. All these guys have had opportunities before and they didn't get it done. Like, that's the person that I'm like, bro, I'm about to give you this mean LaDainian Tomlinson stiff arm. Back up. Just a little taste, just a taste. Back up. I stopped drinking Kool-Aid a long time ago. But I get what you're saying, though. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Our resident comedian video channel. Yeah, I saw your jokes. I saw the, hey, I'll be here all stream. I saw that. He writes, Lou, can we get a sneak peek of your draft quarterback analysis? Yeah, so I had a chance to watch. No, you can't get a sneak peek, man. You start getting the content tomorrow. And I won't even make you wait. I'll upload the first video tomorrow at 8 a.m. and every day until they're done. And next week, what I decided I want to do is I want to have a mob only all 22 breakdown where we look at all three of the quarterbacks that could go in the top three. So I think that's what we'll do. And I'll just do it one stream. That way I don't have to spread it out and do it 3 different times. So I think I'll just cram the 3 of them together and we'll just knock them out and discuss. So that's kind of feeling like next week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday next week, we'll do that. Because Thursday, I want to be able to talk to everybody and give you my ranking of those 3 quarterbacks. I won't give that out until next Thursday, though. So you won't know which one I approve of the most. Because I'll just tell you this: I like them. Everybody told me I wouldn't like them, that they were trash, that they were this, they were that. I like them. They have their own different skill sets and strengths and things that they bring to the table. And you just got to decide what is your preference, what you're looking for the most. That's how I feel about them. I'll say that. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. David Brown, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Louie, did you talk about Quinn giving Whitt son film / homework to his son yet. That's an amazing person. No, I didn't talk about that. But this is the type of leadership that we're dealing with Dan Quinn, and Joe Whitt. It's starting to all make sense to me when guys like Al Harris say I'll go anywhere with Dan Quinn. It's little moments like that stick with people. And that, in society, we always hear about the negative stuff because that moves the needle. Fear moves the needle. Like, I always get on my parents about watching the news. I'm like, the news is the worst thing. Like, I could be having the best day of my life, and if I watch a 30-minute news show, it will take my mood from a 12 down to like a 5. So depressing the news is. And I'm like, and you watch this every day. No wonder you are miserable all the time. Like, I love hearing about the good that people do. Because I always try to see the good in people. And Dan Quinn just seems to be a stand-up dude. Just seems to be one of those guys that represents humanity the right way. And I love those types of stories where you go out of your way to help somebody that you don't have to help. That's an awesome story. Son was struggling with a certain, I think he was talking about like certain type of pressure, and he made a cut up of Michael Parsons at practice going against the tackle to help him out. And he talked about Dan Quinn handwriting him letters when he was in Atlanta. Like, it's just the little things sometimes. It's just the little things sometimes. Red Wings 01, been a member for 16 months. Really, truly appreciate you. Right. I dig their pitch, but they're going to have to show me. And again, that's fair. We've heard that from multiple people tonight. And you're not wrong. None of you are wrong. You all are spot on. We fell for the trap last year, but I've been on the record of saying, and I'm going to continue to say, that this isn't last year. This year is different. Because it is. But in order for that to resonate with the entire fan base, remember I kept talking about that this fan base speaks 15 different languages fluently. But there's only one universal language that can unite the entire fan base. You know what it is. I've said it a million times. That's the one. That's the language. That's the verbs, the verbiage that is the loudest, the clearest, the most concise. That's the one that everybody understands. Dr. B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Dr. B writes, love having hungry coaches looking to right wrongs. I just love anybody with a chip on their shoulder. That comes from a place that I can side with. I remember, I think it was John Gruden, after he had gotten fired from the Bucks, and he created the Fired Coaches of America, the FCA or something like that. Fired Football Coaches of America. I think it was FFCA or something like that. And he said, look, we've all been fired at one point. I remember somebody, I think it was the Buffalo Bills, had one of their coaches stand up and had the whole team stand up. and coaches included. And he said, how many of y'all have been cut? And like 2/3 of the room sat down. How many of you have been traded? And another, like 1/4 of the room sat down. How many of you have been fired? Every coach in the room sat down. And he stopped and he looked around and there was only like 2 or 3 dudes standing up. I said that to say this. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a reason, some sort of motivation to be at their best. Kliff Kingsbury said, I'm not out to prove anybody anything. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. That's never how I've ever operated. I do this for the love of the game. I do this because it's fun. I believe him. I take him at face value, but deep down inside, you're always trying to prove something to somebody, even if it's just yourself, not anybody else. But I love the fact that a lot of these dudes, they doing it for the love of the game. When you break into the coaching profession, a lot of times you're not getting paid, bro. When you're a graduate assistant, when you're, at the bottom rung, a lot of times you got an internship, they're not paying you anything. David Rye, I told you I watched way too many videos, read too much on this guy as if he was the new offensive coordinator or something. He was thought he wasn't the tight ends coach, but rather the offensive coordinator. I really went in on him for some reason. One time he quit a $100K job a year, $100K a year job, to take an unpaid assistant job. That's the life of trying to get into the NFL. And you got to be willing to do that. You got to be willing to sacrifice. So when I say that these dudes are doing it for the love of the game, whether you played in this game and this is all you know, since you were 8, you've been playing football and coaching it, etc. This is what they do. They love it, bro. They don't know what else to do. I love the like I said, and I've said this before, the mixture of what they've assembled here, of young, old, teachers, communicators, relators, guys that are hungry, just getting their feet wet, looking to establish themselves as credible coaches, played in the league. Now they want to establish themselves as really good coaches. Guys who have been, head coaches before, guys who have been coordinators before, now are positional coaches who are just looking to continue to keep their NFL coaching careers alive. Put you in a good position when you got a bunch of guys who just love it, who are willing to sacrifice. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, too drunk but next time be prepared. We noticed. Okay, I'll be prepared next time. I will be prepared next time. C Trill, been a member for 2 months. Truly appreciate you. Who writes, do you think LT can be a good TE2? Keep some depth. I don't see why he couldn't be, but would you want to keep him as a TE2? I mean, let's say you go out and you draft a guy, you still got Amani Rodgers, you still got John Bates. Who are you getting rid of? I mean, that's up to you if you want to keep him. But I think there's still some value in Logan as a leader on the team, but from a play perspective, I don't know if I'm willing to keep him over one of these young guys. Not sure about that. Anyway, I digress. That was the last super. I'm going to get out of here. Start preparing for this trip. So like I told you guys, going to be out of the office. I'm glad they wrapped all of this up before President's Day. Blessings on top of blessings on top of blessings. They were looking out for the kid. So now I can go on my trip, not worry about any news breaking while I'm gone, feel like I should be working. I can just enjoy the time away. Boy, do I need it. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare for that. But I'm a man of my word. I told you I was going to leave you a couple of crumbs. Crumbs! On the way out. So every day, 8 a.m., I'll be dropping a Draft Prospects 101 series video. So look for one tomorrow. And then one the day after that. And the day after that. And then you probably won't get anything on Monday. And then I'll be back like cook crack on Tuesday. So there's that. You guys, y'all know what it is. Really appreciate y'all. Excited about the future, but we got a long way to go. And we're heading into phase 4 of the offseason. But phases 1, 2, and 3, I won't say went off without a hitch, because phase 2 was a bit bumpy. But ultimately, I think we got to where we were supposed to be. And because of phase 2 going the way that it did, I think it made phase 3 go off without a hitch. That includes O-line Bobby Johnson. Excited about the coordinators, what they had to say. Excited about the direction of this program. Now let's see what they do in free agency. Starting with our own talent and then fanning out and seeing what talent they decide to add. We got money to spend. So we're going to see what they decide to do with that money. Anyway, I digress. I don't know why I just blanked. But y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Y'all get out of here. Take care. Enjoy the weekend. You know I most certainly will. And until then, God bless and good night.